Hello everyone. Today we are diving deep into message queue architecture, specifically how source queues, read write queues, dead letter queues, and visibility timeout concepts work together. So first let's talk about the source queue, which is also called the main queue. This is where the publisher sends a message. Let's say process this payment. So this message would first land in the source queue. So you can think of this as your message inbox. So messages arrive from the publisher and are stored in the source queue, and they are waiting here to be processed by the consumer. Since the rate of uh, publishing and consuming might not be same, hence we need to have some sort of queue where we actually store these messages. Now where it gets interesting is basically the when the messages enter the source queue. So what happens is that whenever a consumer pulls a message from the source queue, we would ideally want that this message no longer remains in the source queue, right? But this is not what actually happens. What happens down the hood is that the message doesn't disappear immediately. So instead of getting disappeared, this message becomes invisible to other consumers. So this thing is called visibility timeout. For example, here you can see that there is just one publisher and consumer, but in real life, we can have multiple publishers and multiple consumers who are trying to read and write from the same queue. So basically, what happens is that the message which is there in the source queue actually remains invisible to other consumers, not the consumer who has actually pulled in the message. And the time for which this particular message will remain invisible to other consumers is actually called the visibility timeout. So in this case, you can see this timeout is set to around 30 seconds. That is, after 30 seconds only other consumers would be able to see this message, if at all this message is present. Now, why do we need this visibility timeout? For obvious reasons, because we don't want that two or more workers are processing like the same payment twice. That would be bad, right? Now the visibility timeout gives your consumer, let's say, 30 seconds to process. Now this 30-second time is basically decided on how much time would a consumer take to process a given message. This might be changing for different messages, but we decide an average amount of time takes which a consumer takes to process a particular message. So in this case, let's say the timeout has been set to 30 seconds. So what happens within this 30 second is that the consumer takes in the message, starts processing it, and if at all the process is successful, what it would do is it would delete this message from the source queue. And uh, obviously then after 30 seconds time, the message is not visible to other consumers, the reason being that the message has already been deleted from the source queue. So now I hope this thing is clear, that once the message consumer reads the message from the source queue, it processes it. Till the time it processes a particular message, the particular message remains invisible to other set of consumers. And if at all the processing is successful, the consumer then deletes this message from the source queue, and yeah, this entire thing is done. But what if